Good morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and today a detailed forecast update coming your way. We've got a lot to be talking about today. We've got some rainfall across New South Wales and the southern parts of Queensland expected in about 2 or 3 days' time. We've also got some heavy rainfall that's currently occurring up in Far North Queensland. We're going to be talking about some rainfall across Western Australia as well, and a big cold front that's also expected to impact the southern areas of this nation. We're going to start things off over in New South Wales this morning. You can see it is looking like a pretty clear day to start things off over there, but don't be fooled, there is some rainfall that's going to be streaming in across the northern and the central parts of Australia, and we'll get stuck into that right now. You can see it here just starting off the rainfall forecast. It is looking pretty clear across the majority of New South Wales. We do have a couple of showers and still some big wave activity along the coastline there, and that's expected to continue throughout the course of today, but should ease off by this weekend and not really worth our time talking about. The weather is expected to remain relatively clear and in fact very steady for the remainder of the weekend. It's going to be into early next week when we start to see this rainfall move through the Northern Territory, South Australia, and then into Queensland, where it will be dumping totals of around 10 to 15 millimetres each day for some of these areas, especially into remote South Australia. We could be seeing some abnormally heavy rainfall for this time of the year. The southern parts of Queensland, especially in the southwestern corner, are also expecting some light to moderate rainfall across the start of next working week. The rainfall will continue into New South Wales on around Monday, around lunchtime or so, when it will start to pick up on Monday evening, especially for areas around Lightning Ridge down towards Tamworth, including Armidale, Glen Innes, that sort of area. We will be seeing a little bit of rainfall there. Also some good rainfall expected into the southeastern parts of Queensland on Monday night into early Tuesday morning. A couple of millimetres is possible. The rainfall will then move with its associated low pressure system into the Tasman Sea off towards, Lord Howe Island, and then deeper into the Tasman Sea. It could be bringing some light showers to the Brisbane and Gold Coast sort of areas. We're also expecting some light rainfall as far south as Sydney and Newcastle on Monday and Tuesday, but really not too much rainfall is expected that far south. The bulk of the rainfall will be mostly around Tamworth and Moree, that sort of area. Also in towards Queensland, up towards Charleville and St George, some rainfall is expected out there, and these accumulations where we will be seeing these light to moderate rainfall totals, they're not going to be too heavy. In fact, a lot of Queensland really not expecting much rainfall at all from this weather event. There'll be a couple of good drops across South Australia, but the bulk of the rainfall from this weather event will only be around 20 to 25 millimetres outside of Armidale and Tamworth in the highlands of northern New South Wales and then into the granite belt of Queensland. But yeah, just south of Charleville as well, 20 millimetres possible there, so some good rainfall is still on the cards for this part of Queensland, and this is just steady light to moderate rainfall that will be topping up dams and rivers, so fantastic news for farmers, and this is an interesting thing to be having on the forecast, especially for this time of the year. It's not normal that we see this sort of weather. It does happen every now and then though, and it has already happened a couple of times this year, but I wouldn't be thinking that this sort of weather would be this common this late into the winter season. Behind this weather system, we're going to be seeing a high pressure system, which of course, as you all know, we're very familiar with this now. Very cold temperatures and some pretty cold nights are expected into the first parts of next week, Monday and Tuesday. It's not going to be anything like the cold that we have experienced towards the end of July and the start of August. The temperatures will be slightly milder across New South Wales and Victoria and a lot closer to average, to be honest. However, we could still be seeing some sub-zero degree nights across some parts of New South Wales, especially into the highlands. I mean, it's a given that they go below zero basically every night in winter, but there could be a couple of spots around Orange and Dubbo and then out towards Griffith and Cobar that could be seeing some sub-zero nights as well. So we will be keeping an eye on the weather forecast here. It could be a little bit chilly towards the middle and the latter parts of next week. That basically does it for the rainfall forecast for New South Wales and Queensland. I mean, 4 minutes on, I've certainly dragged it out as long as it needs to be. We're going to move up in towards Far North Queensland now, and every time I talk about Far North Queensland on showery weather events like this, I get some kind of flack in the comments about how 100 millimetres is actually 10 millimetres, which is on the forecast, is no rainfall. But what actually happened last night, South Mission Beach got 100 millimetres of rainfall, and that was what I was saying. I was expecting this sort of rainfall to be possible across this part of Queensland, where we would be seeing daily accumulations pretty steady between that 20 to 40 millimetre mark, and one or two spots expecting more rainfall than that, and South Mission Beach just happened to be on the receiving end of it. A couple of drops as well around Cairns, and a lot of comments as well that I've been seeing is paradise is no longer paradise up there. It's a return to the cloudy, cold and windy, showery activity that we do see every now and then, but it is only going to be lasting for the next couple of days. The showers, which you can see on the radar imagery right now, are going to be streaming in with this cloud along the Cassowary coast between Cairns down towards Ingham and Cardwell. There will be some heavy showers at times, especially around Belen and Kerr north of Babinda. That's where the rainfall will be at its heaviest, and when I say heaviest, it is still really light for this part of Far North Queensland. We're only talking about a couple of millimetres possible each hour, but some of this rainfall will add up throughout the course of today. The rainfall should ease off and pretty much ease out of Far North Queensland by tomorrow night. And it might be a return to the calmer conditions with a little bit more of dry weather mixed in, which will be some great news into the early parts of next week. But the rainfall will continue here and there, and it will be pretty hit and miss for some locations. And in fact, parts of the central Queensland coast early next week are expecting a few showers as well. Just the heads up, Paradise once again will not be Paradise on Sunday, Monday and Tuesday. There is the chance of some showers and some gusty winds along the Whitsundays and the central Queensland coast down towards Mackay, including Airlie Beach, Bowen and that sort of area. The rainfall should clear out of this part of Queensland by around Tuesday or Wednesday, and then the forecast does become very interesting towards the latter parts of next week. You can see the rainfall continuing for Far North Queensland all throughout this forecast. It will be very hit and miss for some locations, only the Daintree and areas around Innisfail and Tully expecting the rainfall to continue throughout next week. The remainder of the areas should be high and dry. The rainfall, however, does actually pipe up at the end of the forecast period with a big low pressure system in the Coral Sea on Saturday the 10th and Sunday the 11th of August respectively. Now this has some very heavy rainfall in it, some very heavy falls are expected from this weather event. However, as you can see, if we flick it over to another forecast model, the Access G3, radio silence on this weather event, so I really don't think that this is worth worrying about right now. However, a very reliable forecast model, the GFS, not one that we normally use on this channel, has actually called for this weather event as well. So we're going to keep a very close eye on the rainfall and the trough and the hokey pokey low pressure systems that are expected to materialise in the Coral Sea offshore from the central Queensland coast. Later on next weekend. It certainly is worthwhile talking about, and like you can see on the rainfall accumulation map, they do actually drop some pretty significant rainfall, and if they do get themselves over shore, they could be dropping up towards 25 to 50 millimetres of rainfall for areas between Townsville down towards Bundaberg, and that's not even including what rainfall they could drop up in Far North Queensland. However, we're not focused on that right now because, like I said, it is a big maybe, it's a big if in the forecast. It's Far North Queensland that we are most certain about in terms of rainfall. Over the next couple of days into the early parts of next week, expecting a further 60 millimetres to fall for some of these locations. And as we saw last night, where rainfall was 10 times higher than forecast, and by no stretch of the imagination am I calling for 600 millimetres in the next 5 days for this part of Queensland, but you can tell that when the forecast models do predict any sort of rainfall, any heavy rainfall, 50, 60, 70 millimetres or more, it certainly is worthwhile talking about because accumulations can, and they often do, blow out big time in this part of tropical Far North Queensland. Now that is enough ramble up on Far North Queensland and over in Paradise. We're going to switch things over. Before we talk about cold weather and storms for Western Australia, we're going to be talking about more mild weather and still storms for the northern parts of Western Australia. Over the past 24 hours, we have had a few light showers streaming in from the Indian Ocean. You can see it here on the satellite imagery. There's been a bit of cloud activity associated with a low pressure system just offshore from the West Australian coastline, and that's been dropping accumulations up to 10 millimetres over the past 24 hours for areas in the Pilbara region, outside of Port Hedland and then inland towards Marble Bar and Tom Price. Some good rainfall has been reported there. Again, it is relatively normal for this time of the year. It's not something you see every year, but it is a little spot of rainfall to break up the very strong, dry season that they do have up in northern Western Australia, and it'll be a return to the dry weather from here on out once this weather event does pass through. And you can see it, there will be some heavy or light to moderate towards heavy rainfall actually expected to continue throughout the course of today and into early tomorrow morning. Areas around Port Hedland could be in for about 10 to 15 millimetres tomorrow, and it could be just this light to moderate steady rainfall that streams in slow-moving bands. There will be light to moderate rainfall as well streaming into the central parts of Western Australia into the north interior for areas such as Giles and Warburton. Also some rainfall expected into the parts of the Pilbara and then into the Gascoyne, areas around Mount Augustus, for example. But as a general rule of thumb, I do believe if you are towards the east of Great Northern Highway stretching between Meekatharra and Newman, I imagine that the rainfall will be in the eastern parts of that area, and there will be very light to absolutely no rainfall expected towards the west of that around East Lions River and that sort of area. Some rainfall is expected to continue into the Northern Territory and South Australia, and that's what led on to the first part of the video, which was the rainfall in the northern parts of New South Wales and southern parts of Queensland. At times light to moderate falls expected in South Australia, but as you can see on the rainfall accumulation map here, really not too much rainfall is expected. I should actually take that back. There is some good rainfall rainfall that is expected for the Northern Territory and South Australia comparative to what sort of rainfall they do receive. In short, expecting maybe a month or two worth of rainfall coming through for the Northern Territory and South Australia for some of these locations, and it looks like it's going to be a pretty big hit for a lot of these places. Areas around Cooper Pedy and Minturpee, very remote corners of South Australia, and then into the Northern Territory around Yallara and Uluru, expecting some decent rainfall as well. Out there, potentially up to 10 to 20 millimeters of the stuff, and again, steady rainfall. It will be enough to soak the desert through and give a nice kind of end to the rainfall for this winter season. I imagine this will be the last decent rainfall for the winter season out here. Good rainfall as well into the central parts of Western Australia. In fact, up to 40 millimeters of the stuff, 50 millimeters actually expected north of Meekatharra, between Meekatharra and Newman. Some decent rainfall expected there. But like I said, once you get towards Gascoyne Junction or Lyndon, out towards, what's it called, Mount Augustus, I was just talking about it, and then into Karanjini, the rainfall will become very hit and miss and pretty hard to predict, but still a couple of drops expected there. And from slow-moving bands as well, you're looking at up to 50 millimeters of the stuff outside of Karratha and Port Hedland. They have had a very dry year. Rainfall, in fact, is very much below average out here, and you can see on the drought monitoring map there are patches of severe to exceptional drought conditions with soil moisture values well below average. This is actually taken into account today's expected rainfall, but yesterday they were very far below average, which means that they are in full-blown drought conditions out here. So this rainfall will be very welcome indeed, and it will just be the icing on the cake to make Western Australia as a whole a lot wetter than average. Now, shifting about 2,000 kilometres south down to the southwestern corner of Western Australia, we're going to be talking about some cold front activity that's expected to be blowing through the south of the state. Now, don't be fooled when I say cold front activity. It's looking like a very fine run of weather for this part of Western Australia. In fact, we're expecting a couple of clear days. It's going to be a pretty cloudy and miserable one around Perth, but no rainfall is expected. That's going to be the start of a couple of days of dry weather, and in fact this weekend expecting cool, calm, settled and dry weather to continue right through in towards Monday afternoon and into early Tuesday morning, when there will be a return to the rainfall and even some thunderstorms possible for the southwestern corner of Western Australia, around the capes, around Cape Naturalist and Cape Lewin and Margaret River, expecting a few drops of rainfall there. The rainfall could pipe up in the Perth metro area around the early afternoon hours between 2 and 5 p.m. on Tuesday evening, before the main cold front activity hits at around 5 or 6 p.m. dinner time or so. The cold front itself is not expected to be too strong. In fact, it's going to be a really weak one. It's only going to drop a couple of millimeters of rainfall, and in its wake, we're not really expecting too much in the way of severe weather. There will be rainfall continuing through Tuesday and Wednesday in the form of some shower activity before another cold front brushes up Wednesday afternoon and impacts the southwest of Western Australia. It's very hard to make out where the fronts are on this map here, but we've got one little trough line extending through here where the cursor is, and this is the main cold front that's going to be coming through Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday morning, depending on where you are in the southwest. But for Perth, it will be early Wednesday afternoon when that cold front comes through, and then a return to the dry weather once again on Wednesday evening and then into Thursday. There will be a few showers still lingering around from this high pressure ridge that's going to be quite far north compared to average, and it will actually be bringing some pretty settled and in fact some warm and mild conditions to parts of the southwest, where temperatures will be a couple of degrees above average on Thursday and then into Friday. As this high pressure ridge moves over the central parts of Australia, we're going to be seeing overnight minimums dip pretty close to zero by the looks of things for some locations. Again, this forecast doesn't really do it justice, considering it is only applicable once the sun has risen, apparently. The temperatures that is before another cold front brushes through, or in fact lines up the West Australian coastline sometime next weekend. And this is still a long way out in the forecast here, but we could be looking at a bit of rainfall expected on Saturday and Sunday next weekend, the 10th and 11th of August respectively. So we'll be keeping a very close eye on the weather forecast here, and this actually does look like some relatively heavy rainfall coming through, but again, we just don't know because it is so far out on the forecast. Now, rainfall accumulations are actually pretty high for some of these spots around Western Australia over the next 5 days. In fact, you can see along the southwest capes here, with the showers and storms that are expected to pipe up on Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll be seeing some accumulations potentially up towards 50 or 60 millimeters. And I've just been through all of the river levels in this part of the southwest around the Vass region, and the rivers here are actually flowing pretty close to some of their minor riverine flooding levels, and it's very rare that you do see rivers approach the minor or moderate flooding alerts in this part of Western Australia. And I do feel like we will be seeing a couple of rivers from this weather event, if the rainfall does actually remain very heavy over land, approach their minor flooding mark. So just a heads up on Tuesday and Wednesday, especially if you do live in this part of Western Australia, the southwestern corner, do expect just a little bit of flooding. It is possible. through this part of Western Australia. Now, 10-day accumulations do completely blow out, and you can see accumulations from that cold front next weekend on the 10th and the 11th of August. We're looking at up to 100 millimetres in the Darling Range outside of Perth. Now, I don't think that that's completely plausible, and that's why I didn't really talk about it, because it is a little bit of a strange weather. Well, it's not strange, it is expected for this time of the year, but it is a strange addition to the forecast, considering we've seen no signs of it in the last couple of days, and it isn't supported amongst the other forecast models. So we will touch on it tomorrow, but again, I'm not overly hopeful on that system going into fruition, at least not exactly how it is being forecast. But still, some good rainfall is expected nonetheless over the next 10 days, and some very good rainfall expected over the coming 5 days. It just does remain along the southwestern corner of Western Australia, between Bunbury down towards Walpole and Northcliffe. The rainfall for bigger communities such as Bunbury or Albany, or even out towards inland towards Katanning and then up towards Perth, the rainfall does remain very light, and in fact non-existent for some of these locations. We're not expecting much rainfall across the southwest unless it is coastal based over the coming couple of days. And that is a big talk on what really isn't too much in the way of severe weather across Australia. So thank you so much for watching the video to this point. Your support has been greatly appreciated. We are going to be showing a little bit more love to the southern states as well, especially around Victoria, Tasmania and that sort of area tomorrow, especially considering they are expecting a bit of front activity, but I just don't really know what to make of it. I don't make a forecast unless I am confident in it, so I'm not going to be talking about that until I know exactly what's going on down there. But anyways, thank you so much for watching the video to this point. If you haven't already, please do consider subscribing, and also leave a like on the video while you're at it. Your support is greatly appreciated. A special shout out to the channel sponsors. Their names are on screen right now. I could not run this show without them, and once again, their support is greatly appreciated. But that is all for me today, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.